The diseases of attitude. It's never that pleasant to talk about the negative, but we got to talk about it because life is part negative. These attitude diseases are like weeds that grow in the garden. It's a normal part of life. Here's a good phrase to note. Negative is normal. It's not successful, but it's normal. It's part of life. You must learn to handle the negative. Don't ignore it. Handle it. You don't have to live in it. You don't have to dwell on it. But you do have to handle it. So you've got to handle the negative. Here's what part of it is. It's called the Great War Between Good and Evil. Mr. Reynolds and I are working on a new book this year called The Great War Between Good and Evil. And there is a war on. The minute you were born, you got involved in the war between good and evil, between darkness and light, between negative and positive, between evil and good, between tyranny and democracy, between weeds and human activity. I mean, the war is on. If democracy sleeps, guess who never sleeps? Tyranny. In the absence of light, guess what's automatic? Darkness. If good does not arouse itself and become active, guess what moves in? Evil. It's a war. A mental war, a physical war, a financial war, between enterprise and ease, between accomplishment and failure. It's a war. That's why there's an Old Testament phrase that gives the best advice for human activity when it says, 6 days labor, 1 day rest. Now, I'm sure we've taken that to mean, don't work all 7 days. Take one off. Here's what it also means. Only take one off. Or you're liable to lose the war. You've got to really work on your consistent self-discipline on a daily basis, or you'll find yourself distracted. Distracted by negative thoughts, distracted by negative people, distracted by water cooler chatter, and pretty soon, depending on the type of people you've associated with, distracted by your doubts within yourself. Never underestimate the power of influence and associations. And never underestimate the power of your own consistent self-discipline. Now let's take a closer look at discipline, at the 3 steps to becoming disciplined. First, true discipline is not the easiest option. Most people would rather sleep until 10 o'clock than get up at 6. It's easier to go to bed late, sleep late, show up late, leave early. It's easier not to read. It's easier to turn on the television than to open a book. It's easier to do just enough than to do it all. Waiting is always easier than acting. Trying is always easier than doing. Imagine what life would be like if we didn't have to make our bed in the morning, or keep our garage clean, or pay our taxes, or show up for work tomorrow. Wouldn't it be fascinating if we didn't have to do these things? Wouldn't it be fascinating? What do you suppose would become of us? You're right. Not much. For whatever the reason, the system we live in and contribute to is designed to make the easiest things in life the most unprofitable. Profitable seems to be the most difficult. Our world is and always will be a constant battle between the life of ease and its momentary rewards and a life of discipline and its far more significant rewards. Each has its own price, the price of discipline or the price of regret. There was once a man who was a great investment banker, one of the foremost in the world in his profession. He was born in poverty in Europe, was completely self-taught, and had used brains and guts to make a tremendous fortune. Many listened in fascination to this man telling the story of his life, and then would say, "Sir, you should write a book that would sum up all you've learned about the world and about how to succeed in it." But this great international investment banker just looked and smiled. He said, "Well, I suppose I could do that. But it wouldn't really be much of a book. In fact, I could tell you everything I know in just 15 or 20 minutes. Everything I've come to understand over the course of a lifetime. But what good would it do? These aren't things you can just hear about from someone else or read in a book. Until you've discovered them for yourself, they're just words. Just puffs of air or drops of ink on a page. You've got to live in order to learn what I've learned. You've got to arrive at these truths the way you arrive at your destination after a long journey, with that same sense of fulfillment and joy. It's ironic, isn't it? Wisdom is not a thing you can buy, or a course you can take in school, or a degree you can earn. Yet every parent wants his children to attend good schools, and rightfully so. Wisdom is not really something you can get from another person, yet you can gain some wisdom from everyone you meet. Wisdom is something a wise man always feels he needs more of. Yet the true sources of wisdom lie nowhere but within ourselves. There are plenty of people who are too smart for their own good, people who are filled to overflowing with facts and technical knowledge, but who are sadly lacking in human understanding and common sense. We've all met people like that. They score high on all the tests. They get perfect grades in school. They win all the prizes. They often get paid very well to practice their skills, to build things, and write computer programs, and carry on lawsuits, and manage other people's affairs. But go home with one of these whizzes. Look at their lives outside of work, if they have a life outside their work, and you'll find that all sorts of things that regular people know, like the difference between right and wrong, and what's fair, and how to give happiness, and what life is worth, that they haven't even thought about.
You have to be all in, and it's the hardest thing to do, because if it fails, then you can feel like a failure. I think of this idea of performance necessity. Two stories kind of come to mind. One is I was working with an Olympic gold medalist sprinter, and we're in the tunnel and we're going out, and he's talking about the competition, and we get out to the blocks, and I said, he was really worried about the competition. I said, well, how do you even gauge, like, who's going to win? In his particular race, people are winning, but by 1/100th of a second, tenths of seconds. I mean, these are really close sprints. And I said, well, how do you know? I said, who would you even bet on? And he says, I would bet on the guy who gets down at the blocks, gets himself settled, looks at the finish line, then says, I got to do this for my mom. And I was like, ooh, that's good. His performance necessity in that is, it's necessary for him to win that race for his mom. I think of, when I started my career and I really decided to go all in with writing and online training. This is like 2006. I'd gone broke, completely bankrupt, and failed. I left my corporate job. I had this cushy kind of corporate job as a consultant. Good job. Left it to write. And I didn't know how to make it as a writer. I wanted to do seminars, workshops, didn't know how to do that. So I was pretty much a hot mess, ran out of money. I got nothing to my name, nothing, kind of no positive prospects. No one's calling me except the guys who want the money. And one night I'm writing, and the apartment was so small. On the bed, I had all my bills, my vision boards, all my research, all my journals. Like, the bed was basically the desk, the extended desk. And my lady comes in, Denise, and she walks past me, but she sees I'm like trying to write, so she doesn't want to disturb me. She crawls under the covers of the bed, and I'm just typing, kind of casually typing away. And I look over, and I see my woman sleeping under my bills. And it was just like, because none of us want to see our family suffer because we are not performing. Sure. And I was just like, I gotta figure this out. And I'm telling you, I wrote more that night than any night in my entire life. Next day I wrote more than ever. That birthed Life's Golden Ticket, which became a bestseller. And in 18 months later, because I was like, I'm gonna figure out this online thing, I'm gonna figure out marketing, I'm gonna figure out how to teach, I'm gonna figure out how to train and get paid for it, because I'd never really been paid for those things. I said, I'm gonna figure out this industry and I'm gonna make it. 18 months later, after her crawling under the bills, I made $4.6 million online. Total transformation. People are like, how did you do it? I'm like, she was my necessity. I was not going to let my woman be in that situation. And she believed in me, she supported me, she married me. And, but she was my drive. And the second part was, I went all in with my identity. I said, I am going to be a great writer, and I am going to be one of the greatest online trainers there ever was. As you said in the intro now, we've graduated over 2 million people have taken our online courses and video series now. I don't think it would have happened if I hadn't had the guts and maybe no other choice to say, this is who I'm going to be, and I'm going to build into that. And it is necessary for me to become that person. So let's go.
The insistence upon action as of primary import. We're not fundamentally creatures who passively perceive the objective world. That's not the goal of our perceptual systems. It's not the goal of our memory. The reason that you have memories isn't to remember the past. The reason you have memories is so that if something bad happened to you in the past, you can figure out what it was that was bad, and you can figure out why it happened, and then you can not do it again in the future, right? It's very practical, and it's the same on the positive end of the spectrum. If good things happen to you in the past, then conceivably duplicating whatever you did to get those good things to happen could have them happen again in the future. So it's practical memory. It's oriented towards action, and it's oriented towards like the quality of your life.
It's hard to say what the soul means metaphysically because, say beyond the confines of a single human being, we do have this sense that the soul can expand itself into something that's greater than it has been. It has this capacity for growth. And we do have the sense that the soul can expand itself to the point where it's enlightened, that it's working as efficiently as possible to transform everything that's unnecessarily painful and malevolent about the world into what's positive and good.
Set a high aim, but differentiate it down so you know what the next step is, and then make the next step difficult enough so you have to push yourself past where you are, but also provide yourself with a reasonable probability of success.
You only have to know two things. You have to know where you're going, and you have to know that you're going to get there. You've got to see it in your mind. Now, this is the beautiful scenario. This is what it's all about. Save that in your mind and think of it often. Think. Every time you think of your goal and you're trying to figure out how you're going to do it, what's the next step? That's all you really have to know. One step at a time. And you'll get to wherever you're going.
We live on a tiny planet in a large galaxy with trillions of other planets. Are our problems really that big? That's perspective.
If you want to always be moving towards your goal, you want to be optimized, you got to learn to get control of your emotions. Understand to tell yourself a narrative that isn't predicated on necessarily identifying what is objectively true. It's identifying what's going to work to get me to my goal.
Imagination has no fences to it, has no boundaries. It's more than what other people maybe see for your life. I think imagination is the cousin to creativity. I think people that allow their imagination to go beyond what is expected began to find out very quickly that they began to see things, experience things that they never would have before. Imagination feeds off the fact that there's always an answer, that there's always a better way, that usually there are more than one answer. So imagination feeds that creative mind, which allows you to see, do, feel, think, experience things that you would never do at any other time. Imagination has the ability to take you from the world that you live in to the world that you could